In our previous video, we looked at the impact of the characteristics of a perfectly competitive market on what it does to price and quantity produced, what happens in the market. And so we found that in the long run, a perfectly competitive market, the price is equal to break even. The quantity is equal to economic capacity. That we're at the minimum of the average total cost curve and that there is no economic profit. So let's expand that a little bit more and look at the long run that we discussed previously. So the long run average cost curve. So remember our discussion where we said, okay, your average cost curve. Come on. So here we have our average total cost curve. And when we started to see the average total cost start to go up, like in our widget demo with the stapler, we would then just get another stapler because in the long run, you have no fixed costs. And so we looked at what happened to those average total cost curves as we added additional staplers in our example. But the idea is the fixed cost is no longer fixed, so we can get more machines, we can get more locations. And we found the long run average cost curve by looking at these minimum average total costs. And we looked at whether that long run average cost curve was going up or down or flat. And so we said over the size of a company, so your company is getting bigger and bigger, your long run average cost curve as you first expand as a company would be declining. A long run average cost curve is going down. What do we call that? Right, that's economies of scale or increasing returns to scale. So as your company expands, your per unit costs fall, and we know we can get economies of scale by the fact that we don't have to double the marketing and finance departments to double production. We can use automation. We can buy and sell in bulk. We know that the bigger your company is, it doesn't necessarily, we can borrow cheaper as a bigger company because we're seen as more stable than a small company. All of these give us economies of scale, right? We talked before about pecuniary and technical economies of scale. So see if you can remember what they were. So as the company expands, we take advantage of these economies of scale. We then reach this point where we have constant returns to scale. And when your business gets even bigger, you start to get too much bureaucracy, too much hierarchy, and you get your decreasing returns to scale, or what's called diseconomies of scale. So we said optimally, we would like our business to be where? Take full advantage of the economies of scale, stop expanding before the diseconomies of scale. Well, how does that relate to a perfectly competitive market? We said in the long run, in a perfectly competitive market, we end up where? We end up at the minimum ATC. Okay? We end up at the quantity that is the most efficient. The quantity that makes the business the most efficient. So according to our graph here, in the long run, in a perfectly competitive market, where does your business end up? Okay, it ends up at the constant returns to scale. That is, you're somewhere past this point here. What is that point called? That's the minimum efficient scale, or MES. Okay. Smallest your company can be and still be at that minimum per unit cost in the long run. So the benefit of a perfectly competitive market is that The companies take full advantage of the economies of scale. They're not so big that they are experiencing diseconomies of scale. The businesses are at their most efficient. They're here where they're getting those constant returns to scale. So we're operating at our CRS, or constant returns to scale, in the perfectly competitive market.